6 o'clock, so we will call our meeting to order. As we do, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'll all stand with us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Carrie, if you'll read the roll call.
Mr. Steinberg,
Here.
Mrs. Rorich,
Here.
Mr. White,
Here.
Mr. Whittington,
Here.
Mayor Oranger.
Here. I'll open the floor to public comment. If there's anyone here wishing to speak on a topic that's not on our agenda tonight, now's your opportunity to approach the council. If you just give us your name and address here.
Steve Riegert, 409 Leary Avenue.
Why don't you come up to the microphone here?
I'm sorry. Never done this.
We'll try to catch it on YouTube, so
Okay. So
you're live.
Steve Riegert at 409 Leary Avenue. And I just don't know if I'm at the right place to ask about the taxes,
Okay?
the proposed tax for next year. Am I at the right meeting to do that?
You are in the right meeting, yes.
Okay.
You are absolutely in the right spot.
Okay.
Our first item on our business tonight will be our truth and taxation hearing. So we'll be holding a public hearing, and we'll go through a presentation for that. So
Okay.
if that's something that you want to discuss, we will have an open public hearing at that point as well.
Okay. Good enough. Thanks.
Very good. Any others? All right, then we'll move on. Council, you have your agenda in front of you tonight. The only modification that I know of at this point is presentation number 4. Randall King could not be with us here tonight, so we will scratch that from our agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to modify or add to tonight's agenda?
Mayor Oranger and City Council, I wanted to let you know we did receive an email from a resident it's addressed to the council, was emailed to council, but it just came in at 5:53. And so you guys all have a copy of it, either a hard copy or on your computers on your email. And it's, the subject is EIS for Mankato Motorsports Park from Nancy Reeser, 305 Maywood Avenue.
All right. Nothing else to add to the agenda? Then I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. You've got also in your packet, beginning on page 3, the meeting minutes from November 7th and November 18th. Did anyone have anything that they would like to have corrected in those minutes? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. You've got the consent agenda. I will note 2 items. We do have 2 resignations of firefighters, Chelsea Britton and Jacob Fangman. So you'll note that those 2 items are included in the consent agenda tonight. And also a big thank you to the Serters for their donation to the parks. Does anyone have anything they would like to have pulled for further discussion? Then I'll look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. All right, then we'll jump into our business tonight. So as we talked about just a little bit ago, tonight is our truth and taxation hearing. on the final property tax levy collectible in 2023. And so Jennifer, I think I will turn this over to you. You've got a little presentation. Then we'll open a public hearing, and if there's any public comments at that time, then we'll look for those as well. So, Jennifer?
All right, Mayor and City Council and members of the audience, as the Mayor mentioned, we have what's called a Truth in Taxation hearing this evening, and I prepared a short PowerPoint with some more information to give you a better idea of how the process works. The purpose of the Truth in Taxation hearing is to give an overview of the proposed final budget and tax levy that will be collectible in 2023. Before a final determination is made, public input is allowed, and that will happen this evening. Market values shown on your Truth in Taxation notice are final, and they are not a subject for the hearing tonight. Sometimes residents will show up and want to contest the market value of their property, so I just want to throw that out there. The purpose of the meeting is not to talk about the market value. That's something that is set by the County Board of Equalization, and that's set earlier in the year. And so any questions on market value should be addressed to Blue Earth County Environmental Resources Department directly. A little bit about our budget timeline. The final levy must be certified on or before December 28th, and cities must also file the certificate of compliance with the Department of Revenue by December 28th. Next, we'll talk about the property tax statement. Included on the property tax statements are all levy authorities, and not just the city, so you'll also see the county, the school district, Blue Earth County, I mentioned that, in the state of Minnesota. Proposed property taxes include the taxable market value for taxes payable in 22 and 23. And you'll see on your property tax statement what was actually paid for taxes in 2022, and then the estimate for 2023 based on the preliminary levy that was certified in September. So Eagle Lake's preliminary tax levy was set at 9% over what was collected in 2022. And this equals about an increase of approximately $80,361. So the proposed final general fund revenues are $1,879,390, where the proposed final general fund expenditures are $1,945,110. And so it's really important to note that the budget would be balanced, but for planned deficit spending, which means we're using capital outlay reserves, which were previously set aside. So this is what the final proposed property tax levy would look like. We've got the general fund, $769,952, our EDA, $51,000, and debt service, $152,310, bringing us to a total of $973,262. And then to give an overview of how the local property tax works, it's a function of the levy and total tax base. So taxable tax capacity is used to determine the local tax rates. We take our city levy, divide by the taxable tax capacity, and we get our city tax rate. And then a property share of the city levy is based on the taxable value of the property relative to the full value of all the other property in the city's taxing district. Per an inquiry earlier in the year to Blue Earth County Property and Land Staff, the average residential sale price for the city of Eagle Lake was $300,100 for the 22 assessment. And they also know the average market value increase based on residential homes was 8.44%. I wanted to note that the city's net tax capacity has increased recently because we've had new residential and commercial construction. And this is important because with more taxpayers, your tax base expands and helps to spread the burden of taxes over more taxpayers. And so if taxpayers do see an increase in their taxes, it's important that they look at their valuation and whether that has increased. And as you probably noticed over the years, your valuation can either appreciate or depreciate. Some years you'll see a fluctuation. Again, the time to appeal evaluation is in April, and taxpayers need to contact Blue Earth County directly, as the city of Eagle Lake does not determine property valuations. And then just overall, property taxes and market value, it's a complex topic, and there's different moving parts. And then on to how our general fund is comprised for revenues and expenditures. So local aid, you often hear it, the abbreviation is LGA, but that makes up a large portion of our general fund revenues. And as you'll see on the screen, it's 38%. Property taxes comprise about 41%. And then the remainder of revenues are a mixture of license and permit fees, interest earnings, franchise fees, police and fire state aid, and just other miscellaneous revenues. And then on the expenditure side, we've got police, fire, and streets, and that comprises the bulk of our expenditures, are about 60%. And then here's a pie chart just kind of illustrating the summary of the general fund revenue. So you got LJ, miscellaneous revenues, and property taxes. And then on the next one, it's a little bit harder to see on the screen, but you can probably see as I summarize, the bulk of the expenditures are fire, police, streets. And then just to give an overall summary of kind of the health of the city, we've got a good bond rating, and we have a policy to maintain a minimum unassigned general fund balance of 50% of the annual general fund budget. And so I noted in my slide here, the unassigned general fund balance as of the audit after last year was $1,706,910. And our general fund expenditures for 2023 that's proposed total $1,945,110. So we're well within the maintaining a minimum unassigned general fund balance. And that amount does not reflect what we have in the general fund for capital outlay, which I mentioned before, with the budget being balanced, but for our capital outlay reserves, we've got a large reserve set aside in the budget for capital outlay expenditures when equipment's up to be replaced or purchased new. And then just to reaffirm the city as a positive fund balance, and this is important because if there'd ever be an unexpected revenue shortfall or some expenditures that were not foreseen that were large, it's very important to have a positive fund balance, which we do. And I would just ask if there's any questions.
All right, are there any questions from the council? All right, since we have no questions from the council, I will open a public hearing tonight. So again, if you're here to speak on our truth and taxation hearing, now you can come up for a second time to the microphone. The public hearing is open, so if there are any questions that anyone has. You were in the right place.
No, not the one I need to know.
Anyone wishing to speak on the truth and taxation hearing tonight?
Mayor, can I just say, if you're here about the valuation, do not feel bad. That's why I have it in my slide. That happens all the time, so you are not alone. Do not feel embarrassed or bad.
Anyone wishing to speak? All right, then I will close our public hearing. Jennifer, is there any action then we have to take tonight? That will come a little bit later as we approve the final budget.
Yes, so Mayor and City Council, later on the agenda, I do have the final tax levy and the budget for your approval later this evening.
All right, very good. All right, then we will move on to presentations tonight. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We do have a busy agenda, so we'll start our first presentation. We have Bradford Development with us in regard to the Mankato Motorsports project. I don't know who will be speaking here tonight.
Good evening. Dan Donaire, Bolton Bank, Natural Resource Project Manager, here to speak or answer questions on behalf of Bradford Development for the findings of fact conclusions on the EAW we submitted, as well as supplemental. We don't have a presentation.
No
We're here to answer
presentation,
questions.
all right.
Yep. You've seen the menu presentation, so.
Council, the public comment period for The EAW closed in October 21st or something like that. We postponed our EIS decision meeting until tonight. You do have now the responses of all of the public comments. So are there any questions from the council in regard to the information that was presented to you? You want me to lead off? I've got a few.
I figured as much.
And I don't know if, Jennifer, if tonight you have a slide of the overall track layout.
Oh, yep, I do. I will put that up right now.
So the two things studied in the EAW or commented on were the effect of the track on climate change and then the impact to wildlife on the lake from noise and other activities. And so I guess one of my questions, I think it's graphically answered, but will the shoreline of the lake be encroached upon at all by this project, or will it in fact be increased?
No, we will not encroach on the shoreline at all. In fact, there'll be a buffer between the barriers and the actual lake and the trees around the lake, and that will be planted with a native grass mix approved by Bowser, Board of Soil and Water Resources.
And in your study then, did you have any conversation or contact with the DNR in regard to?
It was in the supplemental EAW that was discussed. And that final plan, a vegetation plan, won't come out until we move forward with the final design.
All right, because one of my thoughts or questions, as we're looking at impacts on the lake, we could actually create maybe more habitat, but that would have to be done, in conjunction with or
Right.
partnership with the DNR, I would suspect.
It would be, and our plan is to restore the grasslands there, and that would bring habitat. You would see like rusty patch bumblebee come back. That's an endangered species in the area, and we'd plant planting or grasses for those bees to come back and other species as well.
Would there be any thought, interest, discussion, perhaps on Bradford's part of additional tree planting in that area?
That could be a possibility if that's what.
Or is the tall grass prairie the DNR,
It's
I guess, chosen landscaping?
right. Tall grass prairie is pre-settlement kind of vegetation in this area. We do have forested areas around water bodies such as the lake and rivers in the area, but mostly in the areas that are farmed, we're historically tall grass prairie. And that's what we restore, but we can also put trees in there. We could extend that tree line with native trees. And when I say native trees, I'm talking things that are like cottonwoods and things of that nature that are found in these areas around water bodies. We wouldn't bring anything that wouldn't be habitat for waterfowl or anything like that.
All right, yeah, because if the public and everyone can kind of see the top bend around the track area, we've got the kind of the heavy green bermed area and then the red sound barrier and that hatched green portion above. I guess just by scale, it's maybe 300 to 400 feet
Yep.
of land there, and I guess I don't know if that's something that's been discussed, or maybe the council wants to take a look at that if the project moves forward, if that is something that comes up in a developer's agreement, what's the best environmental planting, I'm not sure if I know the words I'm trying to say here, but
Restoration is what we like to use, yes.
restoration, and can we improve the lake even with what this track will bring?
Right. I think through DNR permitting, that discussion will be had and what the DNR would prefer there. And if the council would prefer, the city would prefer a forested area, we could bring that to the DNR's attention as well.
Well, I guess I don't know the answer to that. I guess I
Right.
would lean on the DNR and what
Right.
they see as a restoration and, you know, the most impactful thing to the environment
Yeah.
there. So that kind of leads into my second question. The DNR did mention a number of times in their responses in regard to an in-depth wildlife use and risk analysis.
Correct.
Is this something that you've done in the past, or is this strictly a DNR study?
This is a DNR study. It hasn't been done on this lake. This lake is a shallow lake. It's of low quality. No offense to Eagle Lake and the residents. But since it's a shallow lake, we have a different, you don't have really the high-quality species of waterfowl migrating through here. And there's been many studies done on geese migration and swan migration and things like that. And noise does not affect them, especially for local birds and local waterfowl. They will come back to the area once they become adjusted to the noise. The waterfowl in this area are well adjusted to the noise of the Highway 14, the truck stop, Walmart, and all these other large facilities in the area. So we don't feel that a in-depth wildlife study is warranted at this time. If there was more of a rarity, maybe rare species coming through here, and it was documented, then yes, we would go that route. But we don't have any of that in this area right now.
Are you able to help me to understand, and maybe the rest of the council, what that analysis is? Do you have any idea of what the details of a study like that are?
Yes. I have staff in northern Minnesota that's done these studies before. They're very in-depth. It goes over a few growing seasons. It is basically bird counts. At this point, we can use drones to do this. It makes it a little bit easier so people aren't out in canoes all the time out there or kayaks. Makes it easier. We can digitize things and do bird counts a little bit easier, especially during migration periods. So that's basically you're studying the migration periods. You want to identify what type of birds are out there, which the DNR has done in the past. They have 5 or 6 studies that they've done, one-day studies. Not inclusive, but it's a good snapshot of what's out there. And then that analysis would be used, to determine, the quality of the waterfowl or wildlife as well as the effects of noise or vibrations on those.
So my assumption, kind of what I wrote down was, I'm assuming this takes place over a year-long
Yes, at least one
period
growing
to
season. Yep.
deal with migration and
Yep.
the different seasons. And the name of it was the risk analysis piece,
Yep.
I guess. Would that study identify any potential environmental damaging activities that we would take on? Is that something that comes up and says, here's a risk that needs to be mitigated? And maybe you're not the guy to answer the question, but
It would identify species in the area. It would identify their migration patterns. It would identify how many of those species are in there. From what we've seen for the DNR is published, it's mostly common ducks and geese, and some few shorebirds. Another thing we look at too with this kind of project is shoreline. There's not much like specific shoreline. It's a shallow marsh bordered by cattails. Shorebirds don't collect in those areas. So it's on the northern side you have more of that, but not on the southern side. So our feeling, a in-depth wildlife study really wouldn't give us anything more than we already know. Like I said, if there was something, it was a deeper lake, it would attract some different species, but these are mostly common species, local species.
okay. Switching gears then, I guess a question that I had in regard to sound, so part of this had to deal with modeling of sound projections and anticipation. I guess that's still a concern of mine, but one question that I guess I would ask perhaps the developer, if the condos do not get built, I guess that's a concern of mine. And Jennifer, if you can scroll up just some, the green area on the left. If economics and things don't allow the construction of all the condos, what's the fallback position? What's the protection against noise traveling to basically you've got the new apartments there along Highway 14, which I'm assuming that the condos are the buffer, the sound berm. If those aren't there, then what?
I think that's an integrated part of the design is to have the condos there. Is that correct, Brad?
I think the condos are gonna merge kind of in a phase, and I think you make a good point. And I think if those phases don't come along as fast as we anticipate, we would probably build the same type of berm as you see on the other side with a fence on the top of it, and have that removed then as those condos come into place. But we would have the infrastructure there from the beginning to allow for that.
I guess that's just a fear of mine, economics on these types of projects are, you're at the whim of purchasers, and if things don't sell out, we got a big gap in our condo wall. How do we deal with sound then in the city? You all can throw out questions here. I'm just kind of reviewing.
Yeah, I
mine.
mean, piggybacking off of that, reading through all these comments, a common theme is noise, obviously.
Yes.
Is there more we can do to deafen the noise? I'm not expecting a 50-foot concrete wall, but is there more ideas or different things we can put around this track to definitely mitigate that noise upwards and not outwards?
Right. So thinking about the noise barriers, and I put some thought to it, and it was driving down 169 up towards to a meeting one day, and they're building sound barriers all along there, and you see them all up in the cities, and these are effective measures of dissipating noise. People are living right next to the highway, the sound barriers are up, and they're saying that, sound barriers lower the decibels by 5 decibels. I mean, just on average. And that's on a MnDOT website, and it's pretty common knowledge that they use it everywhere in the cities, and it's effective, and that's what we want to do here too. This track is not running in the middle of the night. It's not running during high traffic volume times of the morning and the evening rush hours. This is a daytime thing, and they're high performance cars, but they're not souped up. Let's say they're not putting super exhaust on them. It's not the guy with the truck with the glass back in the back of his truck driving down the highway. These are high-performance cars, and there's no difference between these cars and the cars on the highway that are going down the road, except for the ones with the glass backs, of course. But, so the sound barriers should, as MnDOT uses them, work effectively on this track.
So you think it's a 5 decibel
That's what I read, yes, on MnDOT website today. Yep.
expectation? Because I did have that written down here. What's the change from noise barriers along highways? I guess I didn't know any of the study or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's not much of a differentiation.
When I was more thinking like tall trees, to add in, or, a taller fence, or, whatever it is to absorb that noise, I think would be a good idea to look into to add more.
And that kind of piggybacks on the mayor's comments, and when he was saying that, I thought of that same thing. Putting trees between the lake and the racetrack would help, kind of deafen the noise towards the lake. Could we put some, against Highway 14? Possibly. I mean, that would be up to, the designers.
One question that came up, I think, was in regard to the topography of the land. And on what will be the north side or the right side of the drawing, the track, on that side is higher than the south side or the left side of the drawing. Is the track higher than any of the berm or sound barrier locations around it? I mean, is the highest point on the track higher than any of the sound
Understood what you're
control
saying.
measures anywhere on the project?
I have an engineer to answer that one.
Good evening, Jason. Excuse me, Jason Femright. We obviously haven't gotten into the final details of that, but I recall back when we were working with the sound analysis gentleman on the original EAW, and the placement of that sound barrier is really to mitigate the sound that's adjacent to that. You know, when we're talking about track on the other side, traveling across this area, you know, that sound barrier isn't necessarily as effective and or as needed for the sound that's directly adjacent to that. So the topography, I guess I would be guessing if it's over, but it's probably on the higher side is about equal to what that 20-foot sound barrier is on the south side.
And so through engineering and excavation and things, I mean, if it were determined that we've got some areas that are suspect, we could bring the track down and.
Yeah, what I think we really want to go back to is that the developer with this project is going to adhere to those decibel amounts that are agreed upon. And in whatever measures that is, him mitigating the vehicles that are on the track, plus the barriers that we have.
Sure.
So.
Well, I think the council, we just don't want to get to a point where now we're stuck with this system that isn't working. So we just want to make sure that every step along the way, these things would be answered.
Yep.
Okay.
And, you know, we're going through the design or with the sound monitoring of that and putting in these high walls. We haven't gotten into final design. If they have to be a little higher, you know, to meet those design requirements for the decibels reduction adjacent to it, that's something we would have to take into account.
All right, other questions? Concerns from the council? I think that kind of addresses most of the questions that I had. I don't know if anyone's got anything further.
I think the two biggest things obviously are sound and the wildlife, right? So, you know, as we get through this, you know, the DNR obviously carries a lot of weight through this process on those two different things. I think I'm somewhat satisfied on the sounds, but I think we need to know a little bit more maybe about how we're going to mitigate some of the wildlife issues, either being grasses or whatever, how the track is going to be maintained. You know, we've been talking about the perimeter, but we really have not talked too much about the interior. You know, is it going to be, you know, manicured lawn, or is it going to be grasses? You know, that's going to do a lot as well.
Yeah, I think
runoff and things like that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I know the DNR had comments or questions about the type of grasses that are out there, and we're talking about manicured lawns only immediately connected to the condos. Okay. The rest of it, I think we have called out as like short pollinator grasses throughout the site, so, yeah.
Perfect.
Yep. So I think we were certainly hearing them in what we're proposing within the facility, so.
It also seems that a lot of the stuff that's being talked about is gonna have to be also discovered as it moves along too. I mean, with animals and birds and sounds and things, when things get moved, when the dirt gets moved. I think that I'm happy to hear about the vegetation that's gonna be inside of the track, because that is the restoration of what the prairie was here in 1850. And one point with that is that is the native habitat for the animals, which is prairie grasses. So I suppose the DNR would probably have something to say about that as well. But again, I think it is a working situation, whereas you would continue to consult and work with them. I mean, I can't expect that you guys know, okay, that is a snow goose that is a female, and that nests in this kind of a tree, and it will lay eggs on May 1st to, whatever. I mean, I know that that's not how detailed it's going to be. So I think that the information that we have, I think in many ways is very helpful.
In regards to the prairie grass, I remember the last meeting, our city attorney mentioned that it's against city code to have some of those longer grasses and stuff, so I assume that the council would have to allow a variance for those, or what does that all entail?
Yeah, if the council's going in that direction, the council should be looking to make changes to the city code that would allow for prairie grass or other things. We've seen other cities go ahead and do that. But some of the mitigation things that you're talking about here are currently permissible for properties inside city limits. We don't allow prairie grass. You know, so that's something that the council's gonna have to consider if that's something you wanna go forward with. And it makes a lot of sense. Both Mankato and North Mankato have amended their city codes in the last 2 years to allow prairie grass to some extent.
From the 124 comments that were received, does the developers team have kind of a synopsis of what you think the most substantial, substantive comments were? Any areas that you think we need to go back and redo?
It was mostly noise. The substantial comments were on noise. And noise is hard to quantify, especially in this area, you know. With a major highway going through and trying to put all the numbers together, it's quite difficult. The models aren't made for that. But I think we presented everything we could and really showed with the sound barriers, the noise will be dissipated quite greatly.
Okay.
And I also want to say that keep in mind that this is the next step of moving forward in this project would be the permitting. And the permitting is going through the DNR, it's going through Board of Soil and Water Resources, it's going through Army Corps of Engineers on the natural resource side. There's other permits that need to be, come through the city, come through you guys as well. So it's not over. The microscope is still going to be on this project.
What types of things are some of those other organizations looking for in their permitting? I mean, will a wildlife use and risk analysis study be required in a permit like that?
That would be up to the DNR. They could throw that in there. We'd have to have negotiations with the DNR, come out to the site with them, and talk to the representatives and see what they think. But our belief is we shouldn't have to do one, and we have enough information to show that. Just with the parameters of the lake itself.
All right. Any other questions from the council? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We will bring this up here again in a little bit. The next presentation that we have is from Citizens Against the Motorsports Park Camp. We've got Mike Gensel. And again, just as a reminder, this is not an extended public hearing.
No,
I know you wanted to present some information.
Right.
And,
I think there is some stuff that gets a little bit swept under the rug with this report, and I just wanted to present some of it. When you're looking at the comments and the all the things that came in, first thing that jumps right out at you is the DNR is questioning the validity of this sound study. It's anticipating the sensitive species being driven away. Now, they say it's not a quality lake. They say it's not species out there, they don't know what's out there. Well, all we have to do is do a study and we can find out before we wreck the habitat for them. We don't need to be in the middle of this and then go, ooh, guys, guess what? Bad things happened. Once the cat's out of the bag, she's out. We can't go backwards. In response to how they're qualifying that the cars won't go and the response for the study that they used was from Melbourne, Australia. It was on some black swans. It was a one-day snapshot. It was on one species, how they reacted. If you put up slide number 2. No, it's a different picture, a different file there. in there, it was taken during a Grand Prix, which is very loud. I mean, of course it is. But the swans did show evidence of physiological stress, and they need a further study, or they were advising of a further study even there to include documentation on the physiological stresses, the reproductive stress, individual fitness, and population health. They advocated for more integrated studies there. And this is from the response from Bolton and Mank. So if they want more study there, why wouldn't we want more study here? The DNR is also requesting further study on the noise modeling. The response that they used was from the modeling that was used on the 2020 EAW, which was the modeling that was rejected by the appellate court. They already said it was not complete, it was not adequate, and that's what we keep using for our model. That model has two sensors on it that weren't able to be used because for some reason we can't monitor on water, according to their comments. The water is the thing that we're trying to protect here. You know, if we can't model on there, we got to figure out a way to model on it. It says that inversions only happen or most likely happen at night. I know a lot about inversions, just because of spraying and chemicals and stuff like that. We hear about them constantly, especially with all the stuff that happened with dicamba and whatnot. The most common times for inversions are in the morning and the evening. Now, those are daylight hours. This track is supposed to be operating during daylight hours. So if the inversions are going to make the noise the worst, guess what? Mornings and evenings, they're in that operation period. Almost every single one of the DNR questions was sent back with the information from the 2020 EAW, the insufficient EAW. When this was remanded back to the sea, a big part of it was on global warming, the effects on that. The supplement states that it will add 35,407.15 metric tons of carbon dioxide above and beyond what's already in the area. Just because there's a highway there creating carbon dioxide and Mankato is creating carbon dioxide doesn't mean we have to make it here because it's coming, so might as well jump on the train. They also admit that this will affect air quality with fumes and may affect wildlife. That's exactly what they remanded it back to us to figure out if it's going to do. They don't say it will, they don't say it won't, but they say it might. So until we know that it won't, I don't see how anybody can vote with a conscience to say that you don't need further study. They're claiming that all vehicles are going to be licensed and driven in. But we all know that when you have a performance park, a lot of them are going to be trailered in. You know, they talk about having shops on site for tuning and souping up. So even if they were legal coming in, they might not be legal before they go back on the road, you know, and they might not ever go on a road. Maybe they're not even legal in the U.S. It also talks about them having exotic car rentals. Now, that again could mean illegal to the U.S. cars. The Long Pack, California facility that was used to go and get all the greenhouse gas emission studies doesn't exist. It was shot down by the city council after they got the study back. Also, it's a 30-acre drag strip. It's not a 240 acres or whatever this thing is road course. It's like apples and oranges. They got nothing to do with each other than there's cars on asphalt. They absolutely avoided the question on the topography. I appreciate you bringing that question back up again tonight. If you're curious, yes, the track is above a 20-foot wall. There's 40 foot in elevation change from the north to the south. Even the 20-foot wall, you know, like Heidi's house just across the road from it, her bedroom window is gonna have no protection from the race course. She's on the second floor, you're over it. Same with all them apartment buildings that you were talking about. They're all higher. All the bedrooms are on the top level. The DNR, which it was brought up that they don't have control of the outlet. They do. I've had talks with, Stein. They actually, that's his last project before he goes and decides to hang it up with the DNR. He's going to get the dam replaced. They want to go and improve this lake. It is a quality lake. There is quality species out there that they're trying to protect. They're trying to encourage. There needs to be a long-term feasibility of this facility, not just the up and get it going and what's going to happen now, as far as how are they going to make condos enough to keep this thing going? Is it a get your foot in the door? And now, as soon as we got our foot in the door, gosh, guys, we don't have enough money. We got to do grudge matches. We got to do drag racing. We got to do spectator events. The reason I bring it up is because I've had conversations with Hastings. They've got a very similar track down there. He says it can't happen. There's no way that they could have, and it's a different owner now, but there's no way that they could keep it going without their grudge matches. They have condos. Brainerd says it isn't this road course that keeps them going. It's the speedway track, you know, or the drag races, the nationals. That's where they make their money they make most of their money in one weekend, the whole year. They bring up the geese in this, and the only thing that they say about it is they will take further action. They don't say what the action is. You put short grasses or pollinator grasses inside an area, it's going to be full of geese. There's a ton of geese in that area. We used to farm the field that one of it's on, the Kapachik piece. You would replant that bottom part 3 times every year because the geese would eat it off. None of these studies take into account the wildlife that's in the tree line. We keep talking about the lake, but there is a tree line there that's habitat for deer or raccoons or, you know, the eagles in the area. And no one's taken that into account in any of these studies. It's only about the shoreline. There was no noise receptors placed on the face of it. Also, the additional development box is not checked. Is there going to be additional development? You know, what is the plan here? It's changed about 6 times at least since we've started this. Can you put up slide number 4? Oh, that's not the one I was thinking of. Slide 3. No, it was 4.
You sure?
Try 3 again then. If I was fancier, I would have done a PowerPoint, but I don't really do this very often. Any violations of the MPCA noise standards is going to be on the city council to enforce those standards. That being your noise committee or whatever else. But when they're in violation, it's on you guys to handle it, or it'll be the city that's liable for the detriment of the neighbors. The eagles, they don't talk about much, they do a little bit in there, but they do admit there's eagles in the area. I think it's on page 13 of the supplemental. They are in breeding season during the track's operation. Now, I don't know if it's gonna affect them, but neither do they. I think it's worth noting that it may, and that's potential for adverse effects. The intersection, I know we don't look at that part of this too much on this, but the intersection of 14 and 27. The traffic study that was done there where it was deemed to be acceptable, it obviously wasn't. It's been changed twice by the MnDOT. They've lengthened the lanes, they've put in stop signs, and it didn't have any extra traffic from a motorsports park or a storage facility for Mankato business. So if all that was fine then, I don't know how they could say that. I mean, we just had a young girl killed back in September on that very site. There needs to be further study on that intersection. It is insufficient. Can you put up slide number 1? I'm pretty sure it is slide 1 this time. They say there's been no significant changes to the entirety of this project. I don't know how anyone can sit there with a straight face and tell you guys that. Number 1 was the first design we were shown. As you can see, there was a driving range. There's all them condos are up there. They're in a totally different spot than where they are now. And then there wasn't the wall on top of them. Thank you. Not that. But now you come along. They've changed the design to where the condos are. The golf court, or the driving range and the hotel are completely gone. That traffic study that you're voting on was done on a driving range and a hotel, not a motorsports park. Also, if you look at the bottom right corner of the new design, there's a whole nother facility in there with the Steffensmeyer project. Oh, I guess we don't even have the newest design here. I think you had the newest design earlier, if you go to that, but you guys all know what I'm talking about anyway. There's 2 more buildings down there. They were not included when the stormwater design was done. Now you've walled off that area, put a bunch of it into non-pervious surface. What's that gonna do to the ditches in the area? You know, that's additional water coming off, not being handled by I don't see any ponds on there to take care of it. Well, that's the site for the Melbourne, Australia, and that's where they're talking about the more integrated studies need to be done. That's the very argument that they have that it's not going to affect wildlife. A study that says that more studies need to be done. And if you could put up slide 4, and that'll about wrap me up here. Okay, so this is what the court sent this back to you to do. Your job tonight is to decide if they've brought forth enough new evidence, because the stuff from the 2020 EAW was insufficient, on whether or not there's going to be potential, not that there is or isn't, but that there's potential for environmental effect on wildlife or cumulative effect on climate change. Or do they need an AIS? While you're doing that, remember the court said that the 2020 EAW is insufficient. And that's where the majority of their responses come from. Please vote for an EIS. It costs the city nothing, and it's a good plan. And if it's a good plan for the developer to go through with this, they won't have any problem passing an EIS. If it's sound, it'll go through. If it's not, it won't. Let these agencies do their job to help you out. I don't think any of us can claim to be an expert on everything. That's why you have these agencies to help you. That's what an EIS does. This is too big of a job for the 5 of you to decide. I'm not trying to be insulting when I say that. It's huge. This is 200 and some acres. It's half the size of your city right now. If you would go and decide to redo half your city, I think you'd want some outside improvement or some outside input. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, just before you go on to the next meeting, I want to make sure the council doesn't have any questions or concerns. As the council knows, I have a prior engagement as well. I'll be leaving about 7:10, so I don't even get through all the presentations before I have to leave.
Okay. I should have asked, is there any questions that you guys had for me or not?
Doesn't look like it.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we're going to set that aside for the moment. We do have other presentations that we will get to. And so we've got some other people here that have information for the council. So we'll jump into presentation number 3. We've got Brian Sarf with us from Bolton and Mink. And this is in regard to our water tower rehabilitation bids.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So last Wednesday, the 30th, 7 bids were received for the water tower rehabilitation project. John Groutman did lead that effort. He wasn't able to be here tonight, but I'm happy to present you the results of that bid. Bids were quite competitive, ranged from a low of $463,000 to about $759,000. Engineer's estimate on this water tower rehab was about $550,000. The low bidder was McGuire Iron. We have a history with this contractor. We would call them responsive in this bid. John did follow up with them about the completion dates, which is July 10th of 2023. They acknowledged that and were aware of that and expressed no concern. So with that short and sweet, I guess we would recommend that this bid, being below the engineer's estimate, be awarded to McGuire Iron.
Brian, is there anything that we need to do as a council at this point if we move forward with the bids? Last time we talked a little bit about logo, decor, colors, things like that. Is that something needed right away, or what's the urgency on that?
I don't believe it's needed right away. It's something we're going to want to keep moving forward. We did include those conceptual layouts with the bid, so more or less locked into a general facade there, but something we're still going to want to move forward with, as that sort of thing can drag on potentially.
Well, price will change, right?
No, as long, again, as the basic concept is there, and we're not talking about adding 15 additional colors to the tower or something very elaborate.
All right. Let's see, I lost my page. We were going to jump into that under new business, but I guess at this point, if the council is comfortable with the recommendation of McGuire Iron for the water tower rehabilitation, I'd look for a motion on that recommendation.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries.
Thank you.
Brian. And now we'll bring up Alejandra, and Was Christian back there too? All right, and they have a presentation to the community here for the final report of the Strategic Economic Development Plan that they've put together for us.
I do. I sent you an email with them because I think it's better than sharing my screen. I do have. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alejandra, and I'm a planner with Region 9 Development Commission. Tonight, I have Christian with me. He's going to be introducing himself in just a few seconds. We're going to be presenting the final strategic plan for the city of Eagle Lake and hopefully go over any questions that you may have for us. For those of you in the audience who may not be aware, the city of Eagle Lake hired the Region 9 Development Commission to create and design a plan informed by community and business input with specific implementation components that can strengthen the local economy and guide economic development efforts.
I'm Christian Brecken. I serve as the Economic Development Director for Region 9, and I've been assisting Alejandra through this process.
Oh, and you can, yeah. So this is our agenda for tonight. I'm going to try and keep it brief because I know we have quite a few things in the agenda. I'm going to start out by sharing some background and context behind our organization, share a little bit about strategic planning and why local communities pursue strategic planning, and then share some insights and key details from Eagle Lake's strategic plan, and then hopefully have some time for Q&A. So Region 9 Development Commission is a regional development organization, or RDO, and as you can see up on screen, there are quite a few of them throughout the state. They were established by Minnesota statute to provide technical assistance to local units of government in the region. We are based out of Mankato, and as you can see us on the lower part, we serve the South Central Minnesota region, and we provide a variety of services based on the unique needs of the region. We work with different state and federal agencies to obtain and administer grants for programs, and we are governed by a commission that is composed of elected officials, business, and community leaders. As I mentioned, we serve the 9 counties that you can see up on screen, as well as 72 cities, 147 townships, 33 school districts, and over 230,000 citizens. We have different areas of service, which include fiscal sponsorships, revolving loan funds, research and data analysis, as well as grant writing and grant aid. Beyond that, we also work on community and economic development, which is a great portion of what we do, along with transportation, clean energy, and sustainability. These are some of the examples of the plans and studies that we've conducted in recent years for the City of Mapleton, City of Madelia, City of Lake Crystal, City of Waseca, as well as with local colleges and universities in the region. So why strategic planning? Why is it important for local communities to do strategic planning? It is a living vehicle for community leaders to think strategically, to make sound decisions in a sea of game-changing circumstances, to focus efforts and develop consensus for collaboratively solving problems. Our goal at R9 is that through strategic planning, community leaders can set clear and attainable goals and objectives and design policies and programs to achieve them. Why do communities pursue them? Because it helps shape their future. It helps define their purpose, and it allows them to be more attractive and responsive and be better positioned to attract funding, which is honestly one of the biggest reasons why communities pursue them. Lastly, it helps them coordinate efforts and lay the foundation for effective and practical economic development. Beyond that, when we work on strategic planning, we look at the federal EDA priorities that the government sets. As you can see, these are the ones as of April 2021. A competitive grant application should be responsive to the evaluation criteria listed on screen and should include at least one investment priority. So we look at this as we draft the plan to make sure that the city is better positioned to attract funding. Now we're going to be briefly sharing some key details and key insights from the plan. For the sake of time, we're only going to be sharing a few details and data analysis that we hope can help you be better informed as you work and implement the plan. Up on screen, we have the timeline of the project. As you can see, we started working on the plan very early on, since the time of February and March, when we met with the city administrator, Jennifer, as well as the EDA, to establish goals and objectives for the plan. From then on, we started working on stakeholder engagement and economic development and market analysis. We made sure our engagement sessions aligned with the summer months, given the higher number of community events and easy access to community and residents. As you can see, all the summer events and engagement sessions took place during the summer, and then early fall, we took charge of the market analysis, document review, editing, and formatting. Finally, we have a public comment period that took place last month when we shared the final plan with everyone who was involved and provided feedback for the plan. As you can see on the left, the plan was developed through a multi-step process, which was detailed in the plan. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Christian.
Well, thanks, first of all, for allowing us to do this presentation. This is kind of a unique community. I've done this for about 20 years. I'm an economist. Wrote my doctoral dissertation about 15 years ago on forecasting, and I've never seen a community that followed a trend in terms of population growth to the extent that I've seen in Eagle Lake. So we did a few estimates. Alejandra came to me and said, let's look at some of the population growth. I think most people in the room here knows that Eagle Lake has done very well in terms of attracting and retaining people in their community. So we did look at the various models that could predict what the population would look like for the next 10 to 15 years. Doing any type of forecasting when it comes to population is challenging, especially in a community like this, which is so highly integrated with the MSA. This is, back home in Europe, where I'm from, we would almost call it a satellite community in that it has its own economic foundation, yet it's heavily dependent on what goes on outside of city limits. But we looked at the actual data between 2000 and 2020, and like I said, it has a tremendous fit, meaning the regression line that you see there, that dotted line, created a very nice fit for doing what we call an autoregressive forecast. Autoregressive forecast means that we just use the past to project the future. If there's a lot of disturbance, we could start using what we call multivariate models. That could be like looking at employment, it could be looking at GDP, or anything that's not related to the past. But in this case, it follows a very strong trend. On the bottom there, I guess it's sort of gold, you'll see the number of households. Same thing there, tremendous fit between the actual numbers and the trend line. The ratio of population to number of households in Eagle Lake stayed very closely between 2.5 to 2.7 people per household, which is right where we would expect it based on state averages. Probably a little bit higher than what we would see in most of the other communities in Region 9. In 6 of our 9 counties, we experienced a population decline between 2010 and 2020. So you have a relatively young population here compared to many of our communities that were centered around anchor employers and who might have seen a population decline. So about 2.5 to 2.7. This figure should tell you, based on the last 20 years, what you could expect in terms of home demand or household demands relative to that trend. What we did caution about, though, is this is a pretty aggressive estimate based on just the last 20 years when Eagle Lake really grew. So I believe in the next slide, you will see the estimates based on what happened since the 1930s. You'll see between at the end of World War II and 1980s, Eagle Lake was actually lagging behind what you would have expected, given the population in this part of Minnesota. Caught up briefly in the late 70s, early 80s, fell behind the trend moving into 2000, and then this strong growth that you experienced between 2000 and 2020 has to some extent exceeded the growth. Projecting, almost 100 years back doesn't make a lot of sense, but we use these figures to combine the long-term growth rate with the last 20 years. In forecasting, we typically say that the more recent data is the most relevant data when you do autoregressive growth numbers. But what we did for the next slide, we adjusted the population growth rate based on the long-term growth rate. And it still fits very nicely. It will bring the growth rate up to 2035 down a little bit. I think it pushed it down about 20 people per year relative to a long-term growth rate, but still a pretty nice fit. I'll wrap this portion up and just say, in growth communities, it's typically the supply that is the interesting part. So are there enough homes to supply the demand? And I think that's true in this community. Alejandro knows this community better than I do after having worked with the city so closely. But if this was a different community in Region 9 where you have seen more population decline, housing probably wouldn't be the limitation to the extent it might be in a community like Eagle Lake. So the truth is probably somewhere in between the more aggressive one on that first slide and what we have here, which is more of an adjusted growth rate prediction. The limitation will probably be to what extent can the community continue to support the housing developments. So with that, I'll turn it back to Alejandro.
Thank you, Christian. And then we have a couple more data points beyond the ones Christian was just talking about. As he mentioned, very high growth. In fact, the growth that Eagle Lake has seen in the last 10 years is higher than what the county, the state, and the nation have seen together in the last 10 years. Beyond that, it has very high levels of educational attainment compared to any other community in the region. And likewise, the housing cost has gone up very high in the last few years. In fact, the median listing home price in Eagle Lake as of October was $389,000, which is trending upwards 23% from last year. The median monthly gross rent is at $1,267, which is as well pretty high compared to the county, the region, and the state. Beyond that, they have very high above household incomes, which right now sits at $75,000, which again is pretty high compared to other communities in our region. And then beyond that, the poverty rate is on par with the rest of the region. However, the highest poverty rate is seen in households that are led by females with no husband present, with children under 18. So again, interesting figures to keep in mind as you look at housing and affordability in your community. As part of the plan, we also conducted an inflow and outflow analysis, which basically means how many workers are coming into the community, staying in the community, and going out of the community. As you can see on the picture or graph on the left, the flow of workers into, out of, and within Eagle Lake shows that there are 34 workers that live and work in Eagle Lake. You have 268 workers that are employed in Eagle Lake but live elsewhere, and you have 13 and 51 workers that go elsewhere for employment. In this case, we have 302 workers that work in Eagle Lake, and as we take a deeper look at that, we find that specifically by age, 55% of those workers are making $1,250 per month or less, and 30% of those are making $1,251 or $33 per month or less. And as you can see, 60% of those workers identify as female, and they are found in the retail and service industry. So this reveals the difficulty for a vast majority of these workers to reside in Eagle Lake. It can be very difficult for them to afford it given the high rental and housing prices. This highlights the need for providing affordable and convenient housing options to accommodate for the local workforce, as well as supporting economic development efforts that can create and sustain good-paying jobs. Finally, we have a set of recommendations that you will see on the plan. They are quite lengthy, so we don't have time to go over all of them. We did sit down with the EDA last month to go over them, but on screen you have the different themes or categories under they were categorized. They were basically designed based on input from the community and the economic data that we just talked about. As you can see, they center around economic conditions, growth and infrastructure, environment, culture, arts and recreation, quality of life, as well as government and city services. Beyond that, one of the things that we want everyone to keep in mind is staff capacity. As you look at implementing and working on the plan is only as successful as it is its implementation. So as you will look into maybe adding staff or consulting with someone, we also recommend leveraging residents at local colleges and universities that can connect with a network of volunteers, interns, and knowledgeable and skillful residents. Finally, we have a list of lessons learned. As we went through this planning process, the first one is that Eagle Lake has a very knowledgeable and skillful set of residents, and we recommend you that you tap into them. As we did some of these engagement sessions, we were very pleased to find that they had great ideas, great suggestions that were implemented and included in the plan. Beyond that, we see different educational opportunities to raise awareness about housing, like I just mentioned, the housing affordability. Some residents maybe that have been here for a long time listed affordability as a great and one of the top reasons why they moved to Eagle Lake. However, the rent and housing costs that we just looked at show that this picture is not the same for everyone. So this could be a great opportunity to engage with them around affordability, workforce housing, as well as water quality, which was one of the main reasons and concerns that they brought up. However, we know the city is taking great efforts on addressing that, and it would be a great opportunity to increase that awareness. Finally, some of the other concerns brought up were around identity and character preservation. Residents want to maintain that identity from the town, and these are the top 5 reasons that they cited as why they decided to move to Eagle Lake, which include the small town, locations, school, quiet and safe. So it is again something to keep in mind as you look at future developments, future decisions, and as the city looks into designing a decision-making framework. Finally, we look at equity and inclusion. We had a quite amount of residents who mentioned Eagle Lake and compared it to Edina and how they see it as a great community that is attracting a lot of residents. However, not all of them felt included and welcomed in the community. So we do encourage the community to think about that. How are you gonna do to retain and welcome those newer residents that are coming in from all around the state? So with that, we wanna thank you and open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Alejandra. Does the council have questions? Well, I think utilizing this, we can get a copy to each of our board members and council members and kind of keep this as a guide as we move through. Obviously, we have lived through the growth of the population and see that trend continuing if only houses are continued to be built. So that's something, I guess, that we will continue to move through, but this will be helpful then for other decision-making.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, finally, we have one last presentation. Al Kiefer is still here, and Mitch Kleist from MABA.
Thank you. I'm Al Kiefer. I'm the general manager of Mankato Air Youth Baseball. Mitch Kleist is with me. Mitch has been pretty instrumental on the repairs that are being done to the Eagle Lake Field. So just give you a quick overview. MABA encompasses the Eagle Lake community. We take in District 77. We have about 1,000 kids playing baseball, roughly 80 teams. Kids playing from 5-year-olds on up to 18-year-olds. And again, we take in the Eagle Lake School and the Eagle Lake Town. And for kids 5 through 9-year-olds, we group our teams by school. So we form an Eagle Lake team at ages 5 through 9. And generally, we have 2 teams at every age, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. We have a great turnout with Eagle Lake kids. But what I want to talk about tonight is our usage and our partnership with the city on your park field. And it's been great. It's been going on for a number of years, and we want to thank you for allowing us to use that field. We think we have a great partnership with the city here. Just to give you some updates on what happened in the last year. Unfortunately, last spring, due to the drought that we had, part of the outfield literally collapsed. The ground out there, as is explained to me, is kind of peat ground. When we had the drought, the drainage caused the ground to collapse. So we had Brunder Construction come in. That, Mitch, was probably May, June. Brunders came in and brought in dirt, leveled that out. We think we should be okay. It's not to say that we won't have to. Might be an ongoing situation. Again, it's the type of ground that's out there that does cause us some problems. But this fall, what we've done now is we turfed in some of the baselines with sod and some of the walk-up areas. Did some repairs to the dugouts. Got a little bit to do on the dugouts yet. We're putting concrete down inside the dugouts, some fascia work. But the biggest thing is we added a storage facility out at the park where we can store equipment for MABA to take care of the fields, because we use what we call this the big field, the 90-foot field, but we also use that multi-purpose field. And what happens out there is the multi-purpose field is used for ages 8 and 9, and then the big field would be for kids who are 14-year-olds and over. But we put a storage facility out there with the help of the fire department. Basically, we split the cost with the fire department, put that out there, and then the Eagle Lake Association, which mostly does T-ball, will also use that facility to store their equipment in. So things that we're going to do yet out there, again, with the dugouts, we need to put concrete in the dugouts themselves, some fascia work, just some general upkeep on the field itself. Then there's batting cages that sit there, kind of more over by the multi-purpose field. We're gonna put, I'll call it AstroTurf. We're gonna turf that concrete. We've got the turf purchased, just a matter of getting out in the spring and doing that. So fixing up that batting cage area, then long-term, a sprinkler system. The park, as long as we get normal rains, it's good, but when we get something like happened a summer ago, when we do get into a mini drought, the field just dries out. So our long-term plan is to put a sprinkler system in the park. Now, that might happen 2 years from now, it might be 5 years from now. Depending on part of what will come back to the city is MABA with probably the fire department and some sponsors will cover the cost of the sprinkler system. But what we're gonna come to the city is for the water itself, is to cover the cost of watering it. But we'll put the infrastructure in, and then probably the other thing is we'll improve the bleachers on the field itself. And I should mention that we have a town ball team that plays there, the Eagle Lake Expos. Mitch is a part of that team also. So, anything to add, Mitch?
No, just want to reiterate Al's comments on the help from the city. I know Adam and Jennifer met us out there earlier this summer. It was great. As far as the agreement between MABA and the city, can't say I was a part of it when it came together, but I'll echo Al in saying I very much appreciate the city's help. You know, I grew up here, grew up playing on that ball diamond. I'm sure others have, or had kids that did, or have kids that you want to see grow up playing on that diamond. And I think that's our goal as well, for sure. And made a lot of progress this fall. Still a lot of things to do. We do have a lot of plans. I mean, but that field has a lot of potential. It does, and certainly not, you know, a secret that baseball fields in general in Mankato, in the main surrounding areas, are in high demand, and certainly full-size ball diamonds. Having this park, this field playable, very important to not only MABA but to Mankato East, and like I'll mention the amateur teams as well. I mean, it's a great spot. And it's very much needed. So we're just going to continue working towards that goal. And we appreciate everybody's help.
Thanks, Mitch. And I should mention, Mitch mentioned Mankato East. So we share this with the school district. So the usage of the field is we start in April. The school district will start using it in April. They'll play their 9th grade and JV games out here, and they'll use it for practicing. MABA will come in that time, and we'll be using it for practicing. When summer starts, when June starts, we'll have games going on at that multi-purpose field every night, Monday through Thursday, from the first week of June to about the 3rd week in July. And we use that big field almost every night and on most weekends. So it gets used, and again, we appreciate it. So I'll open it up if there's any questions.
Yeah, I think the community appreciates the partnership that we've had, and I, for one, want to see that continue and keep baseball down there.
Yes. Oh, and
operational.
And that's our goal too. Again, that field it's just a nice field, and it's a beautiful backdrop. There's a lot of things that we can do. We'll never take away the sliding hill, in case anybody's worried. But no, it's just been a great partnership. So good. And then. Jennifer, I think we've got some work to do yet on our agreement.
Yep. So Al and Mitch and I and Public Works, we talked about just kind of having them come back here. It's been a while to talk about the updates they've done to the field, and then next steps is seeing everybody's in agreement. We'll work on the new agreement and get that hopefully to January, February council meeting and be able to get that approved. So thank you so much for being here tonight and for all your work.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So that'll come back in front of the council then once we have the modified agreement. All right, then we'll move old business. We do have a detachment request for Leray Township. We'll put that off for now as we move into our new business. The first item then that we have in front of the council is the EIS need decision for the Mankato Motorsports Park. And so on page 217 of your packet, again, you've kind of heard from the proposers team, you've heard from camp. Are there any questions from the council on the decision that's in front of us tonight? And I think if you look back, this decision need, we have to look at 4 different criteria. You've got that there. Type, extent, and reversibility of environmental effects based upon this project, the cumulative effects in item B. Again, looking at if that effect is significant. Item C, the extent to which the environmental effects are subject to mitigation through ongoing public regulatory authority. And then D, the extent to which the environmental effects can be anticipated and controlled. So you've kind of looked at everything with the supplemental EAW. You've seen responses. Nobody has any questions? Jennifer, I don't know if you know this, but what is the, and maybe some of the engineers in EIS, what is that process? I think that was a note that I wrote down. What's entailed in an EIS?
So an EIS is a more in-depth process of research, basically. Lots of field reviews and things like that would happen on this, as we talked about the wildlife study, that would come into effect. It's a longer review, it's more in-depth, more agencies get more involved, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would have just direct say, things like that. Where the EAW, and it's just DNR really coming back and talking to us.
All right, yeah, we've never gone through an EIS. Typically, that's kind of the realm of nuclear power plants and mines and things like that, but.
Well, I mean, that was my question too, is with the EIS, what are we gonna gain by that? Like, what more information would we get that we don't have now?
I really couldn't tell you. I think we've really presented everything we got, and all the research has been done. The one thing that could be added to it is maybe possibly doing an in-depth wildlife survey, but if the DNR wants that during the permitting phase, we'll end up doing it anyway.
Yeah, that was kind of a suspicion of mine, is that if we were to move forward with a negative declaration on the EAW, would we still be looking at DNR required or guided wildlife studies and things of that nature?
They're probably the most difficult permit we have to check.
Because I think, for me personally and everything that I've looked at is, my biggest concern is, are we creating some sort of an impact here that will affect wildlife that isn't going to be mitigated or fixed or reversed? And if we can find that out in some sort of a study, that risk analysis, I guess, is the piece that I'm most interested in. That's what I would like to see for my personal opinion.
There is a couple more things you get with an EIS. Just, I mean, if you want to know. You get feasibility studies. They'll go back into that traffic study and do a better study. It will go into the environmental concerns harder as far as the cumulative effects, which is what we're trying to figure out and we don't really know yet. And it will give you all these deep looks at the wildlife.
I see our engineers are shaking their heads. Is that not your understanding?
Just a civil engineer, but my understanding is an EIS is if you request us to look further into a specific topic, you request us to look into a specific topic, including all of the topics, then it's gigantic, that larger project. But my understanding is If you feel some specific topic needs more review, that's what you would request.
If you would go back to the beginning of that screen, the first screen that you have up there, and I would go down. Okay, and it says, if you read insufficient information, and if you go down, if you look, they're looking at saying it has to be specific information, okay? And I guess, in my opinion, that specific information hasn't been brought up about the wildlife or the sound effects on that wildlife.
So that you'll find on page 221 of the packet.
Hey, Mayor, can I ask, is this not open to public comment at this point? Or
No, no. No, we've had all of the public comment that, you know, we've been obligated and more so. Right now, I think the question is in front of the council. Do we feel that the EAW is sufficient and complete? Or is there something further that is needed to make everyone comfortable? Obviously, there are residents that are concerned. Obviously, there are those that are in favor of. You know, we need to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And I don't know if there's some sort of a piece in the middle. You know, is what I've thought. If we move forward, if the EAW is sufficient, but for a wildlife study, is that pinpointing a need for an EIS in that particular focus of the topic? I guess I'm not sure the legalities of how that works.
That would be my understanding.
I mean, because that's everything, you know, from the DNR's interest really focuses on that wildlife study and risk analysis. And I guess I would like to personally see that before the project moves forward.
Good. We addressed that in the wildlife study, the reasons why we don't feel that was necessary. I mean, the DNR has done, you know, one-day studies, snapshot studies that are not finding any species of significance out there. It's a shallow lake. You're not going to have species of significance out there. You know, what is an additional study going to prove that we already don't know? And that's where we're at with that.
I guess it's the risk analysis for my part is even if it's a muskrat or a wild turkey, you know, they may not be protected species or anything, but how are we going to mitigate the risk to them? Obviously, geese has been brought up. Geese is going to be something that you're going to be very, very interested in this whole thing. I envision that guy on the roller coaster, Fabio, getting hit by the goose on the roller coaster. But, I mean, I want to know what I'm not so much concerned about the carbon. That is going to be just something that we cumulatively build as we grow as a society. I'm interested in what are we going to be doing to this lake. I mean, there's good things that I see this project bringing to the lake as well. You know, that's where I kind of got into my review of we could add 400 feet of habitat to the lake through this project somehow in partnership. But I'm only one vote. Thoughts from the rest of the council?
Well, I mean, I have those same thoughts in my head. I think knowing that the DNR is going to be involved throughout the process puts ease, I guess, to some of that. I guess I don't see a reason for an EIS, but I guess I'm one vote only as well.
I would gonna echo what Anthony was saying. I don't really see a need to move forward with an EIS. It's just the fact that I don't think we're gonna find out anything more than we do know now. And there's not gonna be any certainty at any point in time, even if we take another 10 years, how that's gonna be affected. So I think there's ways that we can mitigate through the project and work through the project and make sure and keep, writing that agreement properly so we can have those checkpoints. The DNR will be watching this closely, so if there is sufficient evidence that we're hitting some type of species that we need to work through, I think that'll happen at the time as we move forward. So I think we'll just use more time, and I don't think we'll be any more certain in 6 months or a year than we are right now.
I'll see myself out after this comment, but the fact that there's Migratory Bird Treaty Act protects more than just threatened or endangered species, number one. Number two, the DNR straight up says in their response to comments that the surveys that Bolton and Mink is using to make some of their claims are insufficient and not meant to be used the way that they're being used as data. So that's going to have to weigh on council's conscience. It's real hard to mitigate out of a lot of negative impacts. And I also heard them say that we need more housing. Put housing there instead. You make housing a lot more wildlife friendly than you can from concrete.
Any other comments? Well, then you have in your packet a pair of resolutions. Resolution 2022-46. One is as a positive declaration and one is a negative declaration.
Mayor and City Council, I don't know what happened, but there's duplicates of the resolution. There was a negative and a positive declaration, so I can pull that up if you want me to. I don't know what happened, but we have two duplicates here.
Again, the wording on this is kind of tricky. So a negative declaration means that the EAW is deemed complete and we're giving a negative declaration for an EIS, or a positive declaration is meaning we are saying the EAW is incomplete and we're looking for an EIS to continue. So I would look for a motion on one of the resolutions.
I'd motion for the negative declaration.
All right, we have a motion for the negative declaration. Let me just read that here. If I have the right one, Jennifer, do you have it up there?
Yeah, it's in your packet. The negative declaration.
No, it's here, yep.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't on.
So the key part of the resolution, whereas the supplemental EAW is used to provide sufficient environmental documentation for the RGU to base the determination for a need for an EIS, or that a negative declaration is appropriate. So be it further resolved that based on the findings, the City Council has determined that the Mankato Motorsports Project does not have the potential for significant environmental impacts or effects, and the preparation of the EIS is not mandated in this instance. So we have a motion to that effect. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I guess the question that I have, Jennifer, is that if we move forward with a negative declaration, do we have any ability to put any teeth in to moving forward for that wildlife study?
I guess that's where if you wanted to issue a discretionary EIS, that's probably, it's a question for legal counsel. I don't know that we can require that at this point. Reading through it, and how it defines the discretionary EAW, I wonder if that's or EIS, more applicable.
And maybe we ask the proposers if the DNR requires this. That's something you're just gonna have to go through in the permitting?
Right, if they require it through the permitting, we'd have to do that to complete the permit and receive it.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Aye. Motion carries. All right, then.
Mayor, Oranger, can I interrupt you? Carrie, Deputy Clerk, had a question on the roll.
I did. Moving forward, with that then. Can we bring the old business piece to the city attorney, the detachment request from Lee Ray Township? With this decision tonight, I'm assuming that you would look to move forward with the project?
I think we look to move forward with the land sellers and go from that point. I think they own the land and they are in complete control, and I think that's where we're going to go from there.
Because now we have this sticky situation of the township wishing to detach, and so we need to know that this is moving forward, so.
I'm moving forward.
All right. Is there anything else on this topic? And I apologize, I have to take a 5-minute recess. Meeting back to order. Thank you for the break. All right, so we have, under old business, then the detachment request. I would just send that back to staff just to see if the developer then does purchase the land and move forward, then we would deny that request. I'm assuming we'll bring that back, but if you could have communication with the township, just letting them know tonight's vote, and then that you may look at again next month if that kind of goes away, so.
Mayor, can I give you, Mayor and City Council, a quick update? I did talk to Phyllis Dashner. She's with Liberty Township. She was in the audience. And so we left it. I've been communicating with Ann Arndt, the township clerk. They have a township meeting next Tuesday, and I told her I would get more information, and she'd have some information to take to her meeting. We've had some communication going back and forth with different scenarios and questions, so.
Okay. Yeah, because that one's not anything that anyone's ever really dealt with before, so.
No. My biggest concern is that lump sum payment,
Right.
and if we don't have this all fleshed out, one of the questions I ask is, what's the flexibility or options for the city just to pay 1 year at a time until we get it figured out?
Okay. Is the council familiar with that agreement? There were a number, as we do annexation, we pay the township tax money each year, so there was that chart. I think you had it maybe even in the packet here
Yes.
tonight. Under new business, the EIS need decision, we've done. Water tower rehabilitation project bids, we've done. So we'll move to item number 3, Minnesota Rural Water MIDI loan program for the water tower rehabilitation project.
All right, Mayor and City Council, included with the packet is a letter from Shannon Sweeney with David Drone Associates. He was unable to attend this evening, but he did submit a letter, and I will hopefully be able to explain that and answer any questions. So his letter is addressing preliminary project financing and his recommendation for the rehabilitation of the water tower. So once you factor in the bid and then also the engineering costs and a recommended contingency, we're looking at $549,000. We also have some unused or unallocated, I should say, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds. So as city staff, I recommend that the city council consider a cash contribution of $100,000. And that would leave us just a small balance of $29,598.31. But I know, and some of the things that were approved at the, was at the last meeting, there was some unofficial or unexact costs yet. So I thought we should have a cushion there. Then moving on, Mr. Sweeney recommends an application be made to the Minnesota Rural Water MIDI loan program. Attached to Mr. Sweeney's letter is a cash flow projection that reflects current interest rates for the program. The project is recommended to be financed over 10 years, which would result in debt payments of approximately $58,880 per year. An updated rate projection for the water fund was completed this past fall in September, and it included a water tower rehab project that assumed annual debt service payments of approximately $61,000, so right on. I also included with the information in the packet is some information about the Minnesota Rural Water MIDI loan financing program, and then also a copy of the loan program application form. So basically, the action before you this evening is if you're interested in moving this route, you would just authorize me, city staff, to submit an application, apply to the Minnesota Rural Water MIDI loan program. You wouldn't be committed to anything at this point. We'd have more information at the January meeting, at which time a loan resolution would be presented for your consideration. And that would be the action needed this evening if you'd like to move ahead.
All right, does the council have any questions in regard to the recommendations from Shannon Sweeney? I'm assuming then that that $61,000 annual debt service payment would come out of the water fund, and right
Yep.
now we've got a little bit of money in there, and
Right, so this is factored into that rate projection, and then the next, in his projection for the next, and I was gonna try to turn this sideways so you could see it or rotate it, but he's got this factored in for the upcoming years, so we can kind of project if we're gonna break even, we're gonna have a deficit. The one thing he did note that is not in there, which we would have to have as a separate, would be if we go ahead with the water treatment plant. I mean, that's gonna be such a large amount of money, we'd have to be reliant on grant funds, if that answers the question.
Okay, yep. If there are no other questions, I'll look for a motion to approve the recommendation from David Drone and Associates for the water tower rehabilitation financing.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. At tonight's public hearing for the truth in taxation, one item that is left on that piece is to approve our final tax levy. Jennifer, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add to
Let's
that?
see
or-
here. I think I covered most of it. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Let's see, I don't think so. I guess just one small thing to note is that our tax rate with the proposed final levy is still slightly below the 22 tax rate. And just to emphasize, you know, if a property's valuation increase, their taxes will increase, and that was something important. And I think the gentleman in the audience tonight had mentioned that was one of his reasons for coming here, was about the valuation. So, but other than that, you know, I think we're sitting pretty good. We've got a healthy fund balance. One thing that as city staff, Public Works, and I and Bolton Mank are going to be working on, actually here very soon, we've got a meeting set up, continue discussions on the capital improvement plans. It's something I think the city we need to do a better job of planning for the future, and we're working on that. And that all comes, you know, as we look ahead to our future expenditures that are needed. But like I mentioned before, we've got good capital outlay reserves. We've got a healthy balance with that too. So overall, no concerns from city staff. And I guess one other thing to note is just in the budget is the addition of the 4th full-time officer, a 4th full-time public works worker, and a community development coordinator position.
If the council has no further questions on the final property tax levy, you've got Resolution 2022-47. This is the resolution then setting that final property tax levy. It's on page 369 of your packet. I'd look for a motion approving that resolution.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that carries. The next item we have is a developer's agreement between the Fox Meadow Townhomes LLC and the City of Eagle Lake.
One other thing, Mayor, if I could clarify too, in that motion, you're adopting the resolution. I should have worded it better in my packet, but, and also the budget as well. I maybe didn't, I just put in my motion to adopt the resolution, but I just want to make sure we're adopting the budget too. Sorry about that.
Why don't we just, we can have a motion to adopt our 2023 budget.
Yep.
I'll
Sorry
make a
about that.
motion to adopt 2023 budget.
I'll second that motion to adopt the 2023 budget.
Can I just note that as we have reviewed in the past, I would like to
As we
include
have
that.
reviewed in the
Yes,
past.
thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. All right, now we'll move to Fox Meadows then, and Jennifer, I'll turn this over to you. Council, page 370 in your packet. That's where we'll start.
Mayor and City Council, including your packet, is proposed developers agreement between the City of Eagle Lake and Fox Meadow Townhome LLC for Fox Meadow Phase 1. A number of meetings have been held to discuss the terms of the agreement involving city staff, the city attorney Troy Schramm and Troy Schramm's attorney. The developers agreement has been reviewed by the city attorney Chris Kennedy, so I'll kind of scroll through and walk through some of the points here. So we've got in the beginning of it, there's just some of the standard, language, but, we would, once the, resolution adopting the final plat, which is next on the agenda, is approved, that would be included as an exhibit in the developer's agreement. We've got required developer documents, so prior to issuance of any permits from the city, we'd want to have the preliminary plat, which we have, final site plan, utility plan, grade drainage, erosion control plan, engineering plans and specs for public improvements, which are being reviewed by the city engineer, and our final plat, which will be on the agenda next. We've got some language in here referring to land disturbance, and one of the items that we talked about today, Troy and I, and then Troy's attorney was, he had asked, we've got language in number 2, so B, I don't know if everybody can see that too, it says recording of the final plat by the Blue Earth County Recorder's Office. And I know, a question came up if there could be just approval of the final plat and take out recording. I did consult with our city attorney, and he said we just would leave the language as is in the agreement, and Troy can move ahead at his own risk and go ahead with, getting the permits for land disturbance and start digging, because there's a little bit of a lag between once the final plat is approved and it gets recorded, because the recorder's office, as I understand it, I think has a week to review. And so there's a little bit of a time delay in there if you want to get going and start doing some digging work. So the city attorney indicated to me that that's fine, we just leave the language as is. The city's not going to penalize Troy for going ahead. It'd be at his own risk if there was some issue with recording. And then also it talks about having to, the developer have to obtain the necessary stormwater management permits from the city, MPCA, and I'll kind of scroll down. Some of the things we talked about before were storm sewer and crossing, Agency Street. So something that we had added in, or we had taken out, was that the developer's not responsible for having the stormwater be discharged underneath CASA 27, and the language we put in there that's approved by the city attorney and engineer would be, provided the project does not increase the current volume of stormwater discharge into the east ditch of CASA 27 Agency Street, the outlet off the main stormwater pond does not have to cross CASA 27 south of Thomas Drive. All stormwater ponds must be satisfactorily built in accordance with the approved plans before the underground utilities can be installed. Another thing we talked about was sanitary sewer and water main. Sanitary sewer on Thomas Drive is recommended to be 12-inch diameter pipe, according to our city's infrastructure plan. We'd also require that future sanitary sewer on Thomas Drive be a 10-inch diameter pipe. And so language including the developer's agreement says that the developer and the city would share the cost of upsizing the sanitary sewer and water main pipes from from 8-inch to 10-inch or 8-inch to 12-inch. Just want to make sure I'm pointing out some of the things that the city then would be responsible for sharing that cost for upsizing. We have sidewalks. A 5-foot sidewalk would be required on one side of all public streets within the subdivision. Something we had in before previously, but we've taken out. The city is now submitting an application for transportation alternative funding. That application's due in January, and we're including 2 sidewalk segments and a shared use trail. That was, I've got an image here in my stuff I can show you. Here, I'm gonna pull that up just so everybody's on the same page. So this is the area in yellow, red, and blue that we would be seeking transportation alternative funds for. We had previously talked about the developer be responsible for the portion where there's yellow.
Jennifer, can I interrupt you on that too? So where it's yellow, has there been conversation on what's gonna happen with the city welcome sign? Because that's right where
that'd probably be something we have to
go?
discuss on where to move it. No, we haven't talked about that yet.
Okay, and I guess the secondary piece of that then is, would it be the responsibility of the city to move and reinstall, or on Schramm at that point?
I would anticipate it'd be the city.
Would we want to look at a new location for that sign?
I think it needs to be once.
Maybe on the
The border of the city?
Yeah. Okay, that was my only question, is it would be right in the sidewalk line, so.
Sorry, I'll get back to the, oops, I got, the wrong spot, sorry about that. One moment here, get back. Let's see. There we go, okay. And then stormwater ponds, they would eventually be conveyed to the city once the development, the infrastructure is complete, and it would be conveyed to the city after the engineer is reviewed and inspected and it's acceptable. Until then, the developer would be responsible for making sure that it's maintained, because that's very important throughout the development of phase one. And then there was a question about screening buffer concerned by a couple residents, and so the language agreed to is that the developer provide a screening plan to the city for buffer as allowed by code. And then park dedication, the park board has reviewed this, planning commission has reviewed it. The developer would dedicate 0.3 acres of land, and that's reflected on the final plat, and then pay to the city the sum of money equal to the remaining required dedication percentage, totaling $24,495.68. And this would be received before we sign the final plat. And when the final plat is recorded, then the transfer of that 0.3 acres is included. And then also, I just noted, sometimes we get questions about area charges, so that's also included and reflected in the developer's agreement for water and sewer. And then another key point, we got feedback from Blue Earth County, was a concern that the city and the developer make sure that we work with the property owners to relocate their driveways at 513 Agency and 425 Agency. They'd have to be relocated off of Agency Street and as far as possible away from that intersection on the two respective roads, Blaze and, Connie. And I think those are kind of the big ones. I just wanted to highlight some of those so you know exactly what you're approving before you approve it. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer. We have Brian Sarf in the audience this evening, who's also available to answer questions about infrastructure.
Questions?
Didn't we have a question about lights or something in this last, that was missed?
Streetlights?
Streetlights.
On whose responsibility they are, and
It should be in here that the developer, let me double check though. I thought I wrote it so that it said developer is responsible for all streetlights. We're gonna make sure.
it's in G.
And then the utilities, traffic control signs. That's a great question, because that was something that caught us by surprise in the other developers agreement, where it's not that common to see that the city would be responsible for streetlights.
And so then this agreement's been reviewed by our legal staff as well?
Yes.
And the developer's legal staff? So this is kind of everything that's been ironed out and buttoned up, and any other questions from the council?
So on the plats, like number 7 and number 3, I can see what's gonna be in like section 2, you know, with the hard surface, and that's where the eightplexes are gonna be. What's gonna be in 3 and 7? Or just long, narrow stretches that.
So that's where I believe Troy is proposing to put in townhomes, or twin homes, excuse me. And we'll be seeking to make that part of the planned unit development.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, then I would look for a motion to approve the developer's agreement as presented to you in tonight's packet between the City of Eagle Lake and Fox Meadow Townhome LLC.
I'll make that motion to approve it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. Moving on then, the next item is also related to Fox Meadow, the final plat, page 383 of your packet.
All right, Mayor and City Council, a public hearing was held on November 21st with the Planning Commission to consider an application for final plat from Troy Schramm for the Fox Meadows Housing Development Phase 1. Notice was published in the newspaper and sent to property owners within 350 feet of that parcel. There were a couple residents in attendance at the hearing that expressed concerns, and those are reflected in the minutes. I think predominantly it was concern about screening, buffer, and then whether or not the density of the housing was appropriate in that area. I wanted to point out Bolton and Mink, our city engineer Brian Sarf has been involved with the review of concept plan, preliminary plat, and final plat as it relates to proposed street and utility infrastructure and conforming with city standards. And then outside of that, Brian Sarf, as our engineer, also will review and is in the process of reviewing the engineering plans and specs, and will issue a letter stating that everything conforms to city standards before we can move ahead with issuing permits. The developer will make new applications in the future for the planned unit developments that we just touched on for blocks 2, 3, and 6. And then each of these applications will have new public notice and hearing rights. Let's see, a motion was made and passed at the November 21st Planning Commission meeting recommending approval of the final plat, but they did note that the driveways off of 425 Agency Street and 513 Agency Street South, that they are relocated off of Agency Street, and that any issues related to at the time there was an exception gap be addressed prior to tonight's meeting, and the exception gap has been addressed and included in the packet are the updated plat drawings showing that that has been addressed. And as I mentioned, included are a copy of the November 21st Planning Commission minutes. Updated final plat reflecting the exception gap matter has been resolved. And then resolution number 2022-48, which would approve the final plat for the Fox Meadows Phase 1. And so at this time, a motion is needed to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the final plat for Fox Meadows Housing Development Phase 1.
I'll make the motion to approve the final, or the planning commission's recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. So then the next step on the final plat then, Mylars are going to be provided.
Sorry.
Yeah, and the next step on the final plat, you'll submit Mylars. Do we have those for our signature, or?
So they're gonna go to the county for
Okay.
the recorder's review, and then when they're.
And they come back?
And then they come back for
Okay.
everybody to sign. Troy will sign, the surveyor will sign.
All right.
Do you think that'll be about well, it'd be a week, like you said, the county recorder's office has a week, so.
Yeah, I'm guessing it'll be next week.
Okay.
Okay. Any other, so the other item, Fox Meadows TIF agreement modification?
Right. Okay, I can get on that. All right, so, when the TIF agreement, was approved for Fox Meadows, you know, there's a lot of things that have happened. There are a lot of moving parts of this project, the wetland delineation and the EAW. And so at the time, the start and end date were reflected as August 1st, 22, and then an end date of January 1st, 2023. In talking with Shannon Sweeney, we do not need to have a new public hearing, but we do need to modify the TIF agreement to accurately reflect start and end dates. So I've been in contact with Shannon Sweeney, and he said at this point, he has to work with the legal counsel that deals with the TIF. And so he said he's fine with it as long as I update the council, you guys are aware of it, if you don't have any concerns. It's just that we're just going to be bringing a modified agreement back to the January meeting that would accurately reflect
Just for
start
new
and end
dates
dates.
and-
Yep,
So that'll come back in front of the council when that's ready for
Yep.
review?
great. So no formal action needed tonight.
Okay. Any other Fox Meadows questions?
May I make a
Yeah.
comment, please? Actually, I'm just here, Troy Schramm. I just want to say thank you. Thank you to the council. Thank you for the committees, the planning and zoning. But I really want to give kudos to your city administrator. She wears many hats, and she does she's very patient. And I just want to say that, I say this very respectfully, she has a lot on her plate, and I know Eagle Lake is a growing community, and I'd really like to encourage, I see on the minutes, or the agenda, I think something in regards to the budget as far as, on the budget agenda that you showed as far as the planning and zoning commissioner in regards to that. Staff, Mr. Kennedy has been wonderful, very transparent. Thank you. It's very easy to deal with honest questions, but I just think that in regards to my own opinion, that for Jennifer and staff, it would make things maybe a little, not that it's been, how do you want to say it? I'm not trying to make this difficult here, but it's been a good experience. Excited to be here, glad to be here. But I think with Jennifer, I just wanted to say that thank you, but some extra help would be definitely appreciated there too, as far as other people coming in. I'm certainly, Mr. John Schulte there, he left and he goes, we were just talking and we're watching you on YouTube. And we were just watching, and he made the comment, I don't know how Jennifer wears so many hats as far as what she's doing. So, but anyway, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, staff. Thank you, all the council members.
Yeah, thank you, Troy, because Troy, just so you know, one of our previous agenda items tonight was the strategic plan for the city of Eagle Lake, where it talks about housing and population and kind of the things that we're, I guess, known for. And so you're going to be building right into this strategic plan with the Fox Meadows development. And I think, that's kind of a key component of what we've got going on. And so you're going to be helping this community through your project. So we have to say thank you for putting it together. And
I will get your name on that last Mylar for the mayor there. How
yeah,
about
my
that?
last signature.
But yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the support too, Tim.
Yeah.
It's over the years. I mean, we've had a successful workforce housing out at Autumn Wind. It's professionally managed. And I believe that we'll be able to kick this one off in the same way.
Very good. We look
all
forward
right.
to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Troy.
All right, moving on. Pricing for a new F-250 pickup truck for the Public Works Department. Page 402 of your packet.
Great. Do you want me to give a little lead in, Andrew, or do you want to jump right in? Well, maybe I'll just give a little background and then let you go ahead, just so give some background here on the money that's in the budget for this year. So Public Works Director Andrew Hartman is going to be talking to you about a capital outlay request item. And so that's included with the packet. One of the things we talked about with this year's budget was doing a better job of setting aside money in each of the departments, because we typically split the cost of other items 5 ways between the water, sewer, storm, streets, and parks. So right now, we've got that set up in the budget. We got $55,000 for 2023. We do have 40,000 that's allocated in the streets capital outlay for this purchase in 2022. I think it's important to point that out. We will not be expending that money in 2022, and so there's going to be an increase with adding a plow, the light bar, and other things that Andrew's gonna talk about. So I think it's important to note that this 40,000 is just gonna go right back into capital outlay. They're not losing the money, it's staying in there, and we can reallocate that towards other upcoming purchases out of the streets. So I'll turn over to Andrew and let you explain your request in more detail.
Yeah, so like Jennifer said, that 40,000 that was allocated for 2022, Ford actually took away the purchasing of government fleet vehicles, so that was what that was allocated for. So we're just rolling it into 2023. I got two prices. Ford was, they're starting to go away with the government bidding, so we kind of wanted to just price shop a little bit. And the prices are pretty comparable for the options that, you know, we need. We tried to minimize them as much as we could to keep costs down. But prices from when we got bids last year to this year are up, you know, $6,000–7,000. And so I'm requesting that we purchase the F-250 from Ford. It's a little bit more, but I kind of like to keep everything uniform. We have two newer 2019 Fords already, and I would like to just kind of keep everything uniform. And then like Jennifer said, with the old F-250 and the money that's left out of the capital outlay, we'd like to spend that on purchasing the plow and safety lighting and things like that we need.
Does the old truck have a plow?
Yes, yep.
Are we looking at selling the old vehicle or keeping that as as another option, I guess?
I think we were looking at selling it.
Okay.
We have a plow for the 1 ton, so we'd have a plow for the 250 and the 1 ton like we currently do.
So we don't really have a need for kind of another pickup truck sitting around, or?
Right, yeah, with spacing and, you know, staffing to
Drivers?
drive them all, it doesn't make sense a whole lot to keep them.
All right.
And then the extra money that we would need to purchase, you know, from what we have budgeted.
Okay.
Are you able to take the plow off the 08 and put it on that, or is it not?
We would be able to, but it's kind of an old plow and we'd like to start out fresh.
Get it
and
updated?
Right. And I didn't get pricing on that yet because a new truck is about a year out, so the pricing on everything is gonna change anyway for, you know, a new plow and all the lighting equipment and installation.
Any other questions from the council?
I'll make them, I don't have any questions, but I think I'll make a motion.
You can do that.
I'll make a motion to accept, I'm losing I'm drawing a blank here. Yeah, the Ford F-250 for Public Works.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
I think the only discussion I can is like, Fords, really? You can't do this together?
Like I told Jennifer when we met on it, I'm a diehard Chevy guy, but when it comes to uniformity, I kind of like to keep
No, I do
everything
like,
simple.
You know, it's gonna be the same service, it's gonna be the same, replacement parts, it's not the same, it's better, uniformity is always better.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion then would say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? That carries. Item number 8 is a MetroNet quote for fiber optic at city locations.
Mayor and City Council, I included with the packet proposal and business agreements for MetroNet for fiber at all of our City of Eagle Lake locations. That would include City Hall and our polices here at City Hall, Fire Hall, Public Works, our main lift station, pump house, and water tower. And the reason I included with the packet, and I know MetroNet said, well, do you really need to do that? But because of the term, 60 months, it's a large amount of money over the 5 years. So, but one thing I did clarify with MetroNet when I met with them was that this cost will not increase. That's one positive, so we know what our costs are gonna be for the next 5 years. So he said, no, he confirmed that no, the cost would not increase during the service agreement term. And we will not get billed until we get service installed. So, for instance, whenever we get the SCADA system for the lift station, pump house, water tower, that it'd be at that time that service would go into effect, probably this spring, April. So we won't get billed until that happens. So, right now we're with Consolidated and Carrie head checked, and we don't have a penalty for, when we're ready, we just notify them, and then we end that, arrangement and move right into MetroNet. So,
Do each of these locations currently have internet?
So, no, yes, so they either have a phone line for the dialer system, so like the water tower, they have a phone line, but now we're gonna have, we'll get rid of the phone line and move to the fiber.
So we'll pay a little bit more to have fiber than
Yes,
what
it'll
we
be
had
more.
previously, but
Yep.
And then with our new systems, actually fiber will be cheaper than the other communication options that we have, so.
okay.
Two questions I have. One is, does this also include all the routers and modems that are required
Let's see.
with each connection?
I thought that's what they were offering, is
Yeah,
all that
I was
equipment.
just trying to look through here and see if I could see that.
You know, I did not specifically ask that question, so that's a good question. Let's
And
see.
the other one is will we have enough IP addresses for the SCADA system? Does it require more than a single one? As we go through, and those are pretty minimal charges, but there will be enough charge if you need 2 or 3 IP addresses, but not horrible.
And with the SCADA system, I've had, the guy from MetroNet contact the company that's building our SCADA system, so they kinda
Okay,
are
so
working
they've
together.
talked.
Right.
Perfect.
They've actually talked quite a bit, because, what's their name, what's the company's name?
Usemco?
Usemco, yes, because we said we don't really understand this, we wanna make sure it's done right, and so we put them directly in contact with each other.
Jennifer, can you explain why City Hall is 180 and everything else is 130?
Yes, so I asked that same question. Basically, they've got, if you look up, so this is a little outdated, but up on the top part on page 409, says quote for MetroNet for fiber internet service, and I crossed out 5 because the initial one we got said 5, but then we added that additional location, but basically they required a minimum of $700 per month, and so that's where they just made it a higher charge for Eagle Lake. But I was able to negotiate a little bit, and Carrie was my witness, and got it down a little bit per month, but that's as low as they would go. So that's why that one looks a little goofy compared to the other ones. So.
What do we currently pay for internet throughout all of our facilities?
Carrie gave me that spreadsheet, and I thought I brought it with me, but on here, my desk.
It's in the 500s or something? Okay.
But the one thing Carrie and I talked about that we'll be able to get away from is some of those phone lines. So, because we had done, looked at the cost, and I wish, it's on my desk. I was gonna bring it with.
Well, that's fine. I mean,
It will be
we're
more.
kind of in a ballpark, you know, it's $300 a year more to,
Yeah,
this is, oh, that's a month, sorry.
it was about 200, I think, wasn't about 200 that we came up. Yeah, I think so.
$500 cost is probably a monthly
Yeah,
cost
I
too.
think so.
What's that?
The $500.
Yeah, monthly.
I mean, the way to look at it too is that, like for instance, during COVID, to work remotely, I could work, I could do email, but I could never remote into the city's, actual, I'm sorry, I'm hitting a blank on what server. I could never remote into our server because it would freeze, because we have a dial-up connection. So I mean, just to kind of give you an example of the quality of service we're getting to what we are gonna get now with fiber, it'll be a lot better.
Has anyone signed up with Metronet?
That's great.
It's great?
Not yet. I'm going to.
There's been conversations in probably more park board meetings than anything, and I don't think we've had them recently, but when we had the vandalism down at the park and stuff, if there's security system that needs to be down there, are any of these pump house, main lift station, you know, where there's already fiber that's gonna be ran to it, and is that an area that could, in the future, if we keep having issues, put security cameras or something like that?
Sure, and I did bring that up with the guys from Metronet, that, do we wanna have, we talked about the security cameras, this is something the city's been concerned about in the past and might wanna explore again, and then also about, just offering free Wi-Fi possibly. It seems to be the trend that a lot of parks are going with, so. They said we just need to know where to put they need to know where to put the drop, and then I suppose there'd be another cost, but yes, he says absolutely possible.
Okay.
Any other questions in regarding the proposal for Metronet? If we're all comfortable, I guess I would look for a motion to approve the proposal and enter into an agreement.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Moving on then, a resolution for the transportation alternatives funding.
Mayor and City Council, I included 2 applications for the Transportation Alternatives TA funding. Application for the Eagle Lake Pedestrian Connectivity Project, and that's that image that I put up before that shows the yellow, red, and blue. I just want to note that we talked at the November 7th meeting, and a letter of intent had been submitted, and then after that meeting, there was an interview, so letter of intent interview that was held between Maple staff and myself, and then their recommendation was that we move to full application, and that application is due Friday, January 13th. And I just wanted to be sure, because we'll be getting kind of close with that January 9th meeting, that we get our resolutions adopted now. I've also reached out to Blue Earth County to ask if they'd be willing to adopt a letter of support or a resolution of support. And I talked to the county engineer, and I didn't anticipate there being any issues with that. So that request was made. And so as I understand it right now, the 2 motions that we need would be to adopt a resolution of sponsorship, and then also a resolution agreeing to maintain the facility for its useful life.
Questions? Well, then the first action is on Resolution 2022-49, and this is the resolution of sponsorship. I'd look for a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? And that carries. The next one is Resolution 2022-50, and this is a resolution agreeing to maintain this facility for its useful life. Question for you, Jennifer, on that language. Maintain the facility for its useful life, does that mean that the city is responsible for plowing snow?
I don't know if that's a requirement or not. Do you know, right, Brian? I'm just thinking in other communities I've worked where we didn't always, trails weren't always plowed in the winter. I'll ask that question, but I don't know.
Yeah, this would be a trail, wouldn't it? I was thinking of the other section that was sidewalks on the Fox Meadows bit, so I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's a good question though, because the other 2 parts are sidewalk segments. I will check into that.
Because it's a sidewalk on 211, and then the trail, and then the sidewalk, right?
Yep.
I almost feel like you'd have to do the trail in order to get to school safely.
Keep it open?
Even though it's bused, most of those kids don't walk.
Well, let me get some clarification on that. You're not committing yourself to the project at this point. It's just moving ahead with the application process, so I will get you that information and we can, I'll clarify that.
But are those city, especially on 211, that would be the city's responsibility to plow, right?
It'd be a city sidewalk.
Okay.
As I understand it, I mean, there's nobody that would be fronting
You're not going
it.
through anybody's driveways and stuff, so
Right.
then that would be the city, okay.
So we may have equipment nearby anyway. I just had a question about that language, so. If there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion on resolution 2022-50.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. Moving on then, item number 10, request of a release of security funds for KJ Walk development.
Our engineer Brian Sarf is here. I'll turn it over to you if that's okay, Brian?
All right, my favorite topic, I must say. So a brief history of 2022, essentially. So the city entered into a supplementary developers agreement on November 9th of 2021. In that agreement, the city received a cash deposit of roughly $154,000 to be drawn down as KJ Walk, the developer, completed the remaining infrastructure punch list. The things on that list were a damaged gate valve in the street, corrections to the stormwater pond, the bituminous wearing course, and the sidewalks. So in 2022, the gate valve was repaired. They did dig the pond to the planned grades. The bituminous wearing course was constructed on October 11th. They did construct the concrete sidewalks. However, the main outstanding issue at this point is really the restoration in conjunction with the sidewalks. Excuse me. If you've been out there, you've probably noticed that the boulevards are essentially left untouched since the sidewalk crew came in. There's gravel there. It's not graded properly. And KJ Walk is aware of this. In that developer's agreement, essentially, the plan was to release a certain amount of these funds as the developer completed these issues. The amount on the sidewalk was $46,057.50 for the sidewalk construction. I would deem that as incomplete, being that the restoration is incomplete, and I think that should be retained in the event that the city hires a contractor in the spring to finish this. If the city does that, I would recommend that we look to do that, get it complete before May 1st, so we have time in the seeding window to adequately restore the project. Any questions?
Assuming that restoration wouldn't cost 46,000, say it's 30,000, does KJ Walk get the 16,000? Like, do we reimburse them the remaining? Does the city keep the whole 40, or how does that work?
My understanding of the agreement is that really the deadline was September 30th of 22. They blew that schedule on multiple things, but they did finish these things. But essentially, my understanding of the agreement is if you do not complete this, we retain these funds to essentially complete the
To finish
work.
it no matter what it costs, even if it's under that. And then, so my second question then is, at what point do we just take over and stop waiting for them? Knowing that we have the May 1st deadline, are we planning now, knowing we have money for it, and get someone hired to come in right when spring hits and get it done? So that's my second part to it.
Yep. Certainly the question of the night, I think, on that.
Well, I think we're at that point.
It's just, this is,
This will be the last piece, I think, of theirs. Now, so I just did the math here quick. So if we retain the $46,057.50, we'd be looking at refunding them as their escrow $108,200. Is that what your math says? Or you didn't?
I didn't do the math.
You didn't come up with a recommendation for what we?
Yep, I recommend keeping 46,000.
Okay.
You do the math for the rest.
But I do think, they've drug their feet many times on this. I mean, to the fact that we have this supplemental developers agreement, because they didn't get things done. I just want to see it done. I haven't been down there lately to see are all the light fixtures in. Has anybody been down there to see street lighting? We don't have street lighting yet?
I can't honestly tell you.
John, come on.
I think I saw a locate just earlier today about pushing it out a little farther, so I don't think it's done yet. But I can't
Street
say
lighting
100%.
in that subdivision? Did that?
I just checked, one second. Okay, so they were planning on doing the street lighting last week, then the snow messed everything up, so now they gotta do new Gopher One calls. The plan is to get out there next week, so I haven't heard anything. Have you guys got any Gopher Ones? It'll probably be next week then.
I think we got to go for
You did?
one call. It was
Okay.
just
For the locates. So I have been in contact with Steve Sandy, and we're just keeping it, but the original agreement was that it be done by the end of December.
So at the engineer's recommendation to release the escrow funds, all but the sidewalk component, if my math is correct, it's about $108,200. If anybody is,
I'll make a motion to release that, but withhold that $46,057.50.
I'll second that.
there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I guess the only other discussion I would say is to add on to that of the city being proactive and taking the initiative to just get it planned in come spring to get it done and not wait for the developer to take care of it.
Would that require, Brian, any sort of plans for restoration of those boulevards, or?
I would say we'd use what we have. I don't plan to put a lot of engineering, into it. Essentially just say, here are the areas, here are
So
the
if-
requirements, please fix them.
If the city wanted to run with this, could Public Works go out and get a few site contractors that may have the wherewithal to get it done, or?
Yes, I guess I would, really that's up to city
Right.
staff, what they're comfortable handling.
Yes, like you say, if we could have somebody set up, ready to go in April and get it done.
Yep.
You'll have to
And
put
then
that
just
on.
to be clear though, the 46,000, if it only costs 25, we keep this still,
Oh, I don't think so. Don't we usually give it back? Aren't we gonna end up in a legal situation if we're retaining?
but if they didn't meet their deadline, then we would have kept the full 154, right?
Yeah, that's a legal issue. That was my understanding of the agreement.
Well, at
but-
least we have the funds in hand. We
Right.
can get the
Yes.
project done. If we have to return the remainder to them,
Right.
whatever, but at least we can get it done and get it done in time and move on.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All right, so to recap, we do have a motion to release the escrow amount back to KJ Walk with the exception of the sidewalk amount. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking around, Brian.
I just had one more question while we're on the subject out there. I know it was brought up earlier in the year about plowing out there, and if we were gonna charge or not, and what that was set at.
Well, I guess that
Have
would,
we officially accepted the project yet? Is there, I mean, I don't know if there's any sort of motion to that effect that we have to do. I don't recall doing that on others necessarily.
Yeah, I'm not sure I could speak to it. It's maybe another legal question.
Yeah, because usually we get done with the project, we make final payment, and it's ours, and
But I do remember that conversation that we were gonna bill them at a higher rate even than last year until it was complete.
but they do
I
have
mean,
the,
it's complete.
right, they do have the second lift on, so. And the streetlights are ours. I think it's complete. I think it's a city street, but we should look and see if there is some sort of a acceptance of a project bringing in a new
I think-
city street, because we'll have that with Fox Meadows as well. When they do their projects, when does the city accept that street as,
typically, my understanding is that the engineer would give us a letter of, everything is complete, and I kind of looked at this as being that, no, not everything is complete, we haven't accepted everything, but on the other hand, like you said, it's a city street, it's got the second lift. I mean, it kind of feels like, I mean, if we can accept the city street portion, then it feels like we probably should be just plowing. I just think they've been maybe not the easiest to work with, but in good faith, we want to be good with
Right.
developers, and we've got people living out there. I mean, it's just my,
From a practical standpoint, and Andrew could speak to this, I mean, it is a complete street. Obviously, we've got
residents?
boulevards and that sort of thing that are a nuisance. In terms of snow removal, though, there's really no issue.
What's one more street, Andrew?
No, I just wanted to recap. I remembered the conversation from before and make sure we're not missing out on something.
Okay, so what about sidewalks out there? I mean, I know there's 4 houses or something, but if one of the kids has to get to school or do that, like, that's not a city responsibility, that should be a developer
correct?
moving snow.
And they have
oh,
a.
on the vacant lots, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, yep,
or,
you're absolutely right on
yeah,
that.
or if
Yep.
you have purchased the lot
Then it's that person's
So those
responsibility.
sidewalks should be cleared.
by somebody, right, yeah,
Right.
either KJ Walk,
Right.
private resident, or builder who is waiting to build on those lots. We're gonna fight that thing all winter. I mean, we should probably send a letter to everyone stating, you're responsible for this sidewalk. And maybe I'll bring it up later. Yeah, but it's a code issue with our 12-hour response time to get your sidewalk shoveled. That might be a little, I received a citizen complaint about that. Might be a little bit harsh to have someone expected to get their sidewalks shoveled in 12 hours. So maybe I would just ask that the future council review the ordinance.
I thought it was 24.
I think most communities are 24. You might even find a 36 somewhere here and there, but
Mr. Mayor, I don't send letters out to people on 12 hours. I give them usually a couple days, because I realize people work overnight and they get home, the last thing they want to do necessarily is shovel
right.
a sidewalk right away, so I'm very respectful of that.
Yep.
I think where I have more issue is where those repeat offenders that just don't do it. You know, and then it turns into ice. I think that's the bigger piece than getting it done in 12 or 16 or 24 hours.
Yeah, and I'm thinking not a citation letter. I'm just thinking a preemptive letter to all property owners on that new street, whether it's developer, KJ Walk, you still have responsibility for these sidewalks. Builders that own the lots, because they might completely have it gone in the back of their head. There's nothing out there yet. I haven't even built the house. So it might just be helpful for everyone, so we don't have to fight through that all winter. Did we vote, Carrie? I think we did. I scratched it off.
I think we did. I think then I asked about sidewalks. Yes, we did.
All right. Item number 11, parking along County Road 56, between Highway 14 and County Road 17.
All right. A question came up recently about cars parked along the stretch of road between basically Casey's and then the railroad tracks, and whether or not that is appropriate. And so in talking with our police chief and also the Blue Earth County engineer, just trying to get a little more information about who's got the authority to make the determination whether parking's allowed. There's no signage posted right now. And the county engineer referred me to look at a couple statutes and visit with Chief Kopp. And so I just asked that, he provide his input this evening and give us a recommendation what he thinks. I'll let you take it from there, John.
Sure. So I talked to both Ryan Tilges and Chad Wildy, his assistant, about the issue of parking on 56. Basically, from talking with them, is they said if there's room in the lot, we really shouldn't have people parking out on the 56.
Say that again, John?
Basically, if there's room in the lot, we shouldn't have people parking out on 56, was Mr. Wildy's thought on it. And he said also what we may want to do, or what we should do, is we should pass an ordinance or have the city request to have through a resolution that there's no parking posted out there. A couple of concerns that I have, I guess, I don't like people parking out there because there's no sidewalk out there, so kids use the side of the road when they come back from Casey's a lot of times, or when they come back from the pond, or when people are using the trail, they use that shoulder of the road. No matter, it depends on which side, but either side, coming back. So, especially at night, I've seen it a few times where kids are hard to see, especially if there would be cars parked out there. Kids are really hard to see anyway because there's not a lot of lighting out there. So I just have some concerns that way. And my recommendation, I guess, would be that that we post it as no parking, just because. Well, the other thing that they had brought up is we could talk to the businesses out there and just say, please don't park there. I don't know how far that'll get us, but my thought is that you posted no parking, because I did talk to the assistant county attorney as well. It's cleaner if it's posted no parking for us to enforce. And I guess just because we don't have a sidewalk out there, it'd be nice to keep that clear. The only thing that was brought up to my attention too is like for Casey's, semis will park along that stretch, which to me isn't real safe anyway, because what they'll do is they'll park to the south of the intersection of 56 and Luray, and then people trying to turn off of Luray onto 56, it really is a blind spot at that point. You really got to really inch out there really slowly, and I guess that'd be my recommendation. That way we can actually have some teeth to enforce that there's no parking out there. Again, just a few concerns that I had with the visibility and kids using it to go back and forth from the pond, the Casey's, and the trail.
I'll make a motion to post no parking signs along 56 in between Highway 14 and County Road 17. On both sides.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? That carries. I think that'll be very good because, item 14, within a bicycle lane. Again, yes, we don't have sidewalks, but it is the de facto sidewalk on the shoulders, bicycle lanes. And so, yeah, one day I did notice 4 or 5 cars out there, and it just seemed like it was a hazard, so very good. Other items. I've already received a plaque once.
Try to skirt right by there, Mayor Warner. We would like to present you a plaque.
I wish you wouldn't.
I can't take credit for how nice it looks. Carrie picked the color and did a really nice job with that. So, but we just want to present this and thank you for your many years of dedication and services to your leadership and knowledge we greatly miss. So, I would like to take a picture with you and all the council, that's okay. So, congratulations, Mayor. Appreciate and enjoy working with you.
It's like a Grover Cleveland thing.
This may or may not end up on Facebook. So I'll take a couple pictures, you guys, make sure my. All right, I'll take a couple, you guys. Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Perfect, thank you.
Were you rabbit earing me on a photo? Well, I do appreciate it. Obviously, this is not why we serve, so I just look forward to seeing what the rest of you now will do, taking the ship forward, and look forward to having my Monday nights off. And
You can come and give advice anytime you want.
whoop. Yeah, I'm available for advice, but yeah, that. Obviously, you know, you're here because you're here trying to do what's best for the community. You know, obviously tonight we had a really hard decision. You know, it's so much easier when things are easy, but sometimes things are not as easy as we'd hope. So, but yeah, I look forward to seeing where you all take this. Thank you. I lost my city administrator's report. We're almost to the end.
Just a minute shy of 9 o'clock too, darn it. I'll go fast. Oh. All right, real quick. Yes, Builders Workshop, due to the lovely winter storm we had, it got postponed for the 3rd time now to December 15th. We had a meeting with Mankato, talk about the Falls Sewer customer meeting. There'll be more information coming with that, but basically the summary is just that Mankato's looking to all the partners to lobby together and work with our legislators and letting them know bond funding's needed and the cost has increased for the project. So, I think that's, the contracts are gonna be up for renewal, some more information to follow as that becomes available. There's a new grant that was released for the EAB, preparing for EAB grant. We just closed out the last one, got our money late last week, I think it was, and so now we can apply for another grant. I've heard that the funding is much less than what was available before, but we're still gonna try. So that will be an application coming up soon. And then just to keep you posted, we're gonna be sending out a holiday mailer, and included on there is a indoor Rec on the Go activity that Mankato Community Education Recreation is putting on. That'll be taking place in December. So just want to give you a heads up on that. With that, that's all I have.
As Mayor Pro Tem for 2 years, I want to say thank you to Mayor Tim for being such a great mayor and leader of the city council.
Well, maybe you'll be Mayor Pro Tem moving forward.
Maybe I'll be Mayor Pro Tem moving forward.
There you go. Any other council member reports?
Actually, and then also, I want to get started on Music on Parkway. I've talked to a couple people in the community that I think will be actually new people on the board. Tim, I assume you'll still be part of that? Yeah. Because you were before.
I assume with the water tower rehab, we would move it.
Yes, so, yeah, I don't know where it's at, but that's something I was just thinking this weekend, thank you, and I forgot
It could be like a color run. Everybody just goes out there and we all walk away blue, or. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? We're adjourned.